Good evening. I'm John Mraz, Fairfield City Councilman. I've been on the council since 2005. This is my second term in office. During the course of being on the council, I've found that sometimes what goes on in the city that I help govern is not always reported. And if it is reported, it's not always reported accurately. So on that end, I thought maybe we should have some kind of a program, small as it is, to talk about what's going on in Fairfield, what's happening in our city. The first thing I wanted to go into was crime and the police department. I have other things that we'd like to bring up, but we'll see how long this program lasts and whether I last in it or not. Today I have the Chief of Police of the City of Fairfield, who's going to speak with us on some things such as the crime stats, realignment, the PAL Center, weapons that are picked up, juvenile crime and what have you. It would behoove you to listen to some of the things that were presented, including the talk on the realignment. The realignment is when the state of California is going to release 33,000 prisoners over an 18-month period. That's right. They're going to release them. Just like they do when you have a coop full of chickens or pigeons, you open the door and they fly loose. And in all the wisdom of this state, they've decided to let this happen without any help or without any money towards local enforcement to try and watch what's going on with these people. And I've got to tell you that when you are arrested for a single incident and sent to prison, it doesn't happen that way. Generally, you rack up 18 other arrests, 4 or 5 pages of rap sheet before you go to prison. They don't just send you to prison overnight on most of these instances. So this is something important that people in this city should know about. And we'll come back and we'll talk to the chief in a minute. Thank you.
My name is Abe Batista. I was born and raised here in Fairfield, California. I used to go up and down the street here with my friend Jimmy Hasbrook, and we would sell newspapers. Fairfield means to me family, community, a place of belonging. I've been very fortunate to grow up here in downtown Fairfield and see and do a lot of things, and I'd like to raise my grandkids here. Fairfield, California, my city. That's one of the songs we play, La Bamba.
Welcome back. Today my guest is Chief Tibbet. He's with the Fairfield Police Department. Chief, thank you for coming down today. We brought some show and tell for you, and we want to talk about some things that are going on in our city and the police department. And the chief has been kind enough to stop by, and we have some questions for him that a lot of people that have asked me on the street. Some of the things we want to talk about, of course, are, let's start with the gang injunction first, Chief. This was started in July of 2009, permanently set July of 2010, and we have it in place as we have now. People have asked me, are you going to expand it? Will we bring in more gangs to put on the injunction, or what do you have in mind when it comes to the injunction?
Great. Well, first off, thanks very much, John, for inviting me here to be with you today. The gang injunction, the first and foremost reason we have a gang injunction is to help different neighborhoods feel safe, not be intimidated by a group of gangs. What gangs do is they spend time as a group intimidating others. They spend their time together planning illegal activity, their criminal enterprises. And so what the gang injunction offers us is the opportunity to restrict their movements. And it's only a limited number of folks that we have involved in that. We've asked the courts, and the courts have agreed to those restrictions. So at this point, the gang injunction has been extremely effective. We've seen violence associated with that Norteño street gang, which is primarily the focus of this, go down dramatically. So at this point, we're planning on just continuing it as it is. Okay. We don't have a plan to go ahead and expand it.
And I know that they have, we've driven them out of town. They've been talk about, they've been arrested in other cities, in Oakland for one, and Vacaville for another. And when they were talked to, they said that couldn't hang around Fairfield because of the injunction. That's why they were going to another city to get arrested, which is fine with me. One thing I'm interested in too is a juvenile crime in the city. How does that, you've got some interesting information about it, including some of the items that were picked up behind us, some of the guns.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most difficult areas that we face today, not only in this city, but in communities around the country, is youth violence. And what are we doing to address it? So many of our kids today either involved in gangs, or many that aren't involved in gangs that just look at criminal behaviors as part of a natural form of recreation, if you will. And it's one of the major concerns that we have. It's a threat to the safety of our officers, it's a threat to the safety of our community, it's certainly a threat to the safety of our youth. Behind us here today, what we just did is we brought some weapons that we've seized off the streets. Many of these come from young people. It's amazing today that when we look at so many young people that feel like they need to carry a weapon, or that they carry a weapon and that shooting it, the consequences of which seem to escape them. What I have here today is an illustration. This year in the city of Fairfield, we've confiscated over 300 guns off the streets. That's guns that our patrol officers have seized.
So that's for the year of 2011?
For 2011.
Okay. So how many guns?
Over 300.
That's
Over 300 guns have been seized.
That's a lot of guns.
Great work done by our officers. We feel it's important to continue to try to keep those weapons off the streets. And they range from all different types. Everything from these, what you see here, the small Saturday night specials, to some very high quality guns. Many of these have been stolen from law-abiding citizens, either in burglaries or those who have unfortunately not secured them well enough. We have some, unfortunately, even assault weapons have been seized from individuals off the streets. Shotguns that have been sawed off and modified. Our officers at times with people with trench coats on will have these in a sling over someone's shoulder and secreted under.
Didn't we have a kid that had one in a violin case or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have. But anyway, these are real weapons that are a threat to our community. They're certainly a threat to our officers. And again, it's a credit to the initiative of our officers that we've taken the time and the effort to go ahead and get those off the streets. That's a life saved in my mind.
Since we're talking about the juveniles, what do you think PAL has done to help to stem, juvenile activity on the wrong side?
Well, I think that one of the main focuses that we have, not only in the police department, but I'm just so proud of this city. It's one of the things that made me want to come to this city, is the effort and the mentorship that's going on in this community to try to change that mindset and to try to keep kids from going in that direction. PAL has been just wonderful. I know you spent a lot of your time and effort in getting that program off the ground, and I'm so proud to be involved with it. I just love those kids.
It's a good program. How many kids are we mentoring now?
Well, it went from in the 60s to now we're seeing up to 130, 140 kids a night there. And it gives us an opportunity to work with those young people, gives them an opportunity to see police officers in a different light. And I think it is just invaluable.
Yeah, Sergeant Carrillo was big on that. He's a big guy, and the kids just loved him when he showed up over there.
Yeah, it's one of the things, a little quick story. When I was first getting introduced to the program and getting a chance to go over there, I was there one night and we were playing basketball, and there must have been 60 or 70 kids that came up and took the time to joke with Kevin. They took the time to reject a couple of shots in ways that were pretty aggressive. It was just really great to see. Some of those kids, when I took them aside later on, they said, when Corella first showed up in there, they would never have had that kind of contact. But over time, they were able to break down barriers, and he's been able to teach them lessons.
Right.
They've been able to teach him lessons.
He's been a good mentor. He's a good friend, and I love him over there. Since we're talking about juvenile and crime and what have you, I wanted to go over a couple of things with the stats that we have, and these will show on the screen as we talk about them. But I was elected in 2005 when this city was called Richmond North. Armed robberies were prevalent and so were a lot of other crimes. And I have to tell you that I'm very proud of what the police department has done. Looking at the crime stats from 2006 to 2011, you have to point out that the overall crime total for Part 1 offenses, and I'll have you talk about the Part 1 offenses in a minute, Chief, is in 2006 was 647 different Part 1 offenses compared to 399 this month. Huge drop, a huge drop in crime in the city. The total for Part 1 and 2 offenses here is 5,008 or 5,048 offenses in 2006 compared to 3,124 for 2011. That's huge. It's just huge. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the crime stats themselves. And I just think the department has done such a wonderful job of bringing it and making the city safe again. You know, as we were talking before, and this city was known to have a mall, but the mall was perceived as unsafe to shop at, especially after dark. We don't have that perception anymore. And I think it's because of the good work of the men and women of the police department.
Well, I thank you very much on behalf of everybody in the police department, but it's also a community effort. Let me talk about Westfield just a little bit. Westfield has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in partnership with us to do improvements and to work closely with us. We know that we can't enforce away all the issues that we have to make a community safe, that we have to work on prevention, education, and that some engineering efforts can help. Westfield's helped us a lot with lighting. We've given them some suggestions on things they can do in terms of placement. They've followed those guidelines. We've asked for their assistance in terms of security practices, and we've partnered with them closely. My wife and I have been here for 18 months now. We spend a lot of time at the mall. We spend time at night and on weekends at the mall. I'm very comfortable with the progress that we're making there. We've also spent a lot of time out working in the exterior around the mall. Thefts were an issue when I got here. Car thefts were an issue. We're working with the mall on different aspects of that, and we've made some progress in those areas.
Well, one last thing about that is our auto theft. We're looking at auto theft in 2006 was 706 compared to 301 in 2011. That's a huge drop.
It is.
It's a huge drop. So
it is. One of the other areas that I spend so much time looking at is that of aggravated assaults. Aggravated assaults are a piece of both gang violence, youth violence, as also family violence, and we've seen some drops in those areas. Our work with having a social worker active as part of the police department that can work with victims to stop the cycle of violence has been a major factor. We've worked closely with the district attorney in developing a family violence center so that we can go ahead and break that cycle.
You know, I think everybody can look at the information we have up on the screen, and they can take a look at 2006 to 2011, and that's where the big breakdown comes in and how the city has changed and turned around. We're going to go ahead and take a break now, and we'll be back in a minute.
My name's Kelly Garcia, and I've lived in Fairfield since I was in kindergarten. I've worked for the city of Fairfield since I was 17. I feel like I'm part of a big family being here. I think what I like most about Fairfield is that everything's kind of close. You can get to the market really easily, or the library. It doesn't take too long to get across town if you want to visit someone, and it just feels like a real community here. Fairfield, California. It's my city.
Welcome back. We're here with Chief Tibbetts from the Fairfield Police Department. We've been talking about some of the issues that are important in Fairfield. One thing that we should talk about is this training facility. It's quite unique, and I'm going to leave this to the Chief to talk about it. And why don't you go ahead, Chief?
Well, thanks very much. Yeah, this truly is a unique facility anywhere in Northern California or anywhere in California. I think that it was a wonderful vision for the safety of this community. When I talk to folks out on the street a lot, we hear that this is a shooting range. Well, it's so much more than that. It's one of the things that I get a chance to talk to people about. This is a fully comprehensive training center. It has classrooms, it has mat rooms for officers to to plan and train and actually do the hands-on work that we need to do the job on the streets. A lot of times people say that your job looks so simple when they see an officer on the street. Well, it's really not that way. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time for someone to learn these skills, and this facility has given us the opportunity to do that. It's already saved lives in this city. Earlier this year on 2 separate occasions, one an active shooter scenario. An individual had shot members of his family and was holding others hostage there. Our patrol officers were able to neutralize that situation and bring that to a successful conclusion in less than a half an hour. That doesn't happen in most cities, and this facility helped that. On another occasion, an officer was faced with a suicidal man feigning a weapon. It was skills and practice sessions that we're able to accomplish in this facility that helped save that individual's lives. So we hear a lot about the cost of the facility. My response is that we've done an awful lot to try to make this a reasonable expenditure, and at the same time we ask, what's it worth to save a person's life? What's it worth for somebody to be able to come home at night? It is, when we've shown earlier today with the weapons that we see on the streets, this requires extensive amount of training for us to be able to deal with.
And one thing about it is that I know the newspaper had a story that was erroneous and quite misleading, that this was expensive and not paying for itself. And that's not the point. The point is it is paying for itself in saving lives, number one. Number two is we could lose in one judgment in this city more than the cost of this facility in one civil suit by inappropriate behavior by our officers. This place pays for itself every day. How many agencies do we have signed up to use this facility?
Right now we have 18 different agencies. We've had inquiries from agencies as far south as Alameda County that are now coming up and taking a look at using the facility. We've made adjustments to our financial practices here in terms of trying to help make it even more cost effective and cost efficient. We're going to continue that during the year, and that if I had a crystal ball, I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, this facility will be a hub for law enforcement training from around Northern California.
I think with the way things are in the economic climate, no one can duplicate this facility anytime in the future or even has the money. You know, one thing that we did here at the facility is we had a chute named after 2 slain officers, one from Fairfield, one from Solano County. This chute was manned by people from the Police Officers Association, Police Management, and also the FEA, the Fairfield Employees Association. They did this day and night to try and make a success out of it. They didn't charge any money for it. It was all voluntary, and quite frankly, this ended up giving PAL $18,000, which is very commendable. And I don't know if you have anything else before we go to the last subject.
Yeah, what a wonderful effort. It was driven by members of our department. It was a great cause. Almost 90 officers from around California, including some federal officers, were able to come and participate in a 2-day event. And we were able to, as you mentioned, donate money for the PAL Center. We were also able to showcase this facility in ways that it had not been seen before. We had agencies from Southern California with individuals that left here talking about the fact that others would want to come up here. And
Right.
it was also a help, I think, to the community.
Yeah.
Many people spent time and stayed a weekend in Fairfield, and we showcased the city.
I think everybody did a great job on it. We have one more thing that's really important, and it has a lot to do with this state, this city. It's called realignment. And I'm going to let the chief talk about it. And if you get nothing else out of this program, this is the most important thing you should listen to. Realignment is going to affect us in ways that the chief can tell you now. Chief?
Yeah, well, thanks, John. The realignment situation in the state of California that came about sadly has turned a community safety issue into a math problem in trying to reduce the state's budget. First off, I think that everyone agrees that our system of incarceration needs to be looked at. There's a 70% recidivism rate, and there's probably things that we can do differently, and my colleagues and I are very supportive of looking at new ways to help people to be rehabilitated and move back into the community. Unfortunately, the way this system has come about, it has left local government, and most of us in California, over 80% of the folks that are going to come back to communities are going to come back to local communities, and there's not a dime that's been allocated for us as local law enforcement.
So basically, they've released the state prison inmates and given us the responsibility to round them up and watch them.
Unfortunately, there's been some misnomers that have come about. The state has decided that individuals who've committed crimes such as burglary, such as car theft, many of those who also have committed other crimes, some of violence, are considered non-serious, non-violent offenders. Anyone who's gone to state prison has really had to work at getting into state prison, and that's going to be a problem for us. The issue now is, and we are very much in support of the fact that there's discussion about programs in place of working with the counties, of local control and local communications. Those are all wonderful things. The problem is that there is no accountability, there's no supervision built in.
And no money.
And there's no funding to ensure that that supervision and accountability will come about. My colleagues and I are also very concerned about the fact that this is going to take years of progress that we've made in making communities safer, and it's going to turn around because these individuals are going to be out on our community, they're going to be on our streets, and that they're going to be out without supervision, and they're going to reoffend without consequences.
I'm very concerned about the fact that we've done so much since 2006 to drop the crime stats that we have, and we can lose that almost overnight by having to control this population that's going to be unleashed on us.
We're working very closely with this. I'm also concerned for the safety of our officers, that we're going to be in contact with more sophisticated offenders than the state is acknowledging. Fortunately for us in this county, the sheriff has been very supportive in working with us. This is a problem I know that we'll get through, but there's going to be some significant bumps along the way. And in the next couple of years, this is a program that should have been thought out for 2, 3, 4 years to develop a good safety net. Unfortunately, this has been thrust upon us, and we're having to make up the rules as we go.
Well, what you said was interesting, because as a former police officer, I can tell you that before you make state prison, you generally rack up about 3 or 4 pages of rap sheet in various offenses. Most of the time they're dealt with, they're dismissed, they're reduced, what have you. It finally takes enough before you go to prison and before you finally make it. But these people, when they go to prison, they're not unsophisticated. They know exactly what they're doing when they get out, and we've got a real problem trying to deal with them.
That's right, and we're going to work closely with the probation department, and we need the community's support and understanding to watch this along with us and to be partners with us. If I could say, just as we're concluding, the Fairfield Police Department is not successful if it's not the support of the Fairfield community. And we need people to continue to call us. We need people to continue to work with us. We need people to come out and help us with both PAL programs and other programs to help mentor our youth. The way that we're going to get through this is to try to focus our efforts on young people so that they don't get into this system long term. And I thank you so much for your support and for your assistance in having me on your show.
Chief, thank you very much for showing up today. Good show. Thank you for your support.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you.
And folks, thank you for watching. I hope that you got something out of this. I hope we were informative and a little bit entertaining. We have some serious problems. And we wanted to do the police department first. That's where I came from, what I have some knowledge of, and it's nice to have the police department that we do and our chief of police to guide us through.
Thanks again, John.
Thanks again.